had a dream last night. It was the kind that seems real right up to the point where you wake up. Something so strange about it. Certain things were really strange about it. But it never occurred to me that it might not actually be happening. I'm still not prepared to say that it didn't happen. I'm not spiritual, and I don't really understand stuff like that. I just feel like I've been somewhere, and now I'm back. And I know something happened when I woke up. I think while I was asleep too. I went to bed last night with a strange feeling. We all remember times when we felt like we were being watched. But this was more than that. I felt like there was someone there with me. But still, I couldn't keep from falling asleep. I don't exactly remember the beginning of the dream. The first thing I recall was staring at my house and walking. All of my neighbours' houses were gone. I was heading down a long empty road, and there was no one around but me. I don't remember what I had been doing at my house beforehand, but I may have been there a while before I started walking. I recall feeling a strong urge to walk. I felt okay walking down that road, though it was cold and dark, and I felt a little lost. But I wasn't afraid, not like I had been in my room. The road changed after a while. It had been straight and nondescript the whole time, but eventually I reached a bend and then a fork. When I reached the fork, I wasn't alone anymore. A familiar voice called out to me from the side of the road. "It's good to see you." The voice whispered, "I'm just sorry to see you here." I turned to face the voice, knowing who I would see. It was my old friend from my childhood, someone I hadn't seen in years. He looked just a little different from how I remembered him, but not by much. He was older than when I saw him last, obviously, but he seemed at least a few years younger than me somehow, even though we're supposed to be the same age. He was also very pale, unbelievably white in fact, and he had deep circles around his eyes that were solid blue, as were his lips. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm here to warn you." Naturally, I was all ears. "There's a man in your house right now," he explained. "What do you mean there's someone in my house?" "I was just there. I think. I didn't actually know how long ago I had been there. I wasn't sure how long I had been walking. You don't understand. He's really in your house right now." I had no idea what he was talking about, but I was curious. "Who is he?" I asked him. "He's the cold man. He comes to people at night when they're afraid." The cold man? I'd never heard of anyone like that before. I wanted to know more. So I asked, "What does he do?" "He waits to be noticed. Then he makes his move." You know that chill you feel on your back when something really scares you? That's not just nerves. That's him standing behind you. What for? I wondered. What does he do once you notice him? My friend looked down and away. He wouldn't answer that question. Just don't let him in. What do you mean? He can be close forever. My friend explained. He'll walk around your house at night and even stand in your room while you're asleep. Like he is in yours right now. He can know where you are. He can even be looking at you. But he won't find you unless you let him in. How does he find you? I mean, how do you let him in? My friend looked to either side of the road like he was worried that someone might overhear. He leaned in very close and whispered, "If you see him, if you hear him, or if you ever start to suddenly feel very cold, don't move. Don't talk to him. Don't acknowledge him. Don't ever let him in." "I don't understand," I admitted. "How do I get rid of him?" "You can't," my friend replied in a small, shuddering voice. "Look, I'm out of time." "Out of time?" I repeated, not sure what he meant exactly. My friend shook his head. His eyes were wide and he was shivering. Off in the distance, I noticed a dark figure creeping up behind him. But something kept me from speaking. My time is up. Don't let him in. And whatever you do, don't answer it. Something pulled my friend into the darkness, and suddenly, I couldn't see him anymore. Before, I could follow after him, though I was startled awake by a loud noise. I was sitting in my room, fully dressed with my shoes on. I could swear that I wasn't dressed when I went to bed. My shoes and legs were covered in dust. My feet were sore, and I could hear a ringing noise right next to me. In the confusion of waking up from such a vivid dream, I didn't immediately recognize it. I felt so cold. Then I looked down and saw my phone. That was the source of the ringing, remembering my friend's words. I didn't answer it. Eventually, it stopped ringing. The room was cold as ice. The feeling that I was being watched was as strong as it could have been when I had fallen asleep. I could hear something inside my closet, but I dared not move. I just closed my eyes and waited. Eventually, I heard footsteps walking away. Still inside from the closet, it was as if they were walking down some unseen hallway, though my closet is small and I couldn't see anything unusual in there. When the footsteps got far enough away, the cold lifted. He didn't get in this time. If my dream was true, if the thing in my closet was who I think it was, I must never let him in. I think he'll be back tonight though. That's when he's supposed to come, as my friend told me. I don't know what happened to my friend. I just hope people will remember his warning. If you start to feel cold while reading this, don't be alarmed. If you hear something in your house, just ignore it. You can't afford to let him find you. Don't let the cold man in. I'm not going to try to argue that it's normal to take a cold bath at 4 a.m. It's not. But it's been my experience in life that everyone has their strange little habits. I mean, given the things I've seen some people do when left to their own devices, Jack's was actually pretty mundane. For example, mine is coffee. I drink gallons of this stuff, and at really odd hours. I'll be wide awake until the sun comes up. But not because I'm some kind of insomniac. Not really. I just fell into a destructive cycle. Get bored, drink coffee. Starting a new book. Make coffee first. Movie marathon with Jack. I'll fix us each a coffee. Exhausted at work because I didn't sleep for more than an hour last night. Better grab a coffee on the way. You get the picture. Anyhow, I was staring at my ceiling, wide awake. My bedside clock displaying 03:51 in fat orange digits. From across the hall, I heard a door click open, and then the pad of bare feet on the carpeted landing. Jack was embarking on his nightly jaunt to the tub. I had work in 5 hours, so I tried to suppress the urge to intercept my fellow night owl for a cup of the black gold instead. I wedged my head between 2 pillows so that the dull throb of my heartbeat filled my ears like pulsing music, building towards a crescendo. Far from soothing my worries and lulling me to sleep, I found that listening to my own heartbeat just made things worse. I was counting the thumps, trying to figure out whether or not the beating was irregular, or if I was simply whipping myself into a panic and causing my heart rate to raise by itself. As the thought crossed my mind, I felt a desire to unwind for the comfort that comes with wrapping one's hands about a warm beverage. Coffee. Sweat crept up my back like a clammy hand, and when I glanced at the clock, I realised, with some dismay, that only 4 minutes had passed. So I sat up, threw on my dressing gown, and you guessed it, wandered down to the kitchen, the ghost of that familiar aroma already filling my nostrils. As the spoon clinked inside the cup, I noticed the sound was offset by another, a low baritone voice from the adjoining bathroom. Just Jack singing, I told myself. But this was not quite a song. There was no melody to it, just a repetitive rhythm. I'd have thought it to be some kind of looped recording, perhaps playing from Jack's phone. But for occasional variations, intermingled with it, too, was a sighing. Like the hiss of steam when you submerge a hot pan in cold water. Chant, chant, hiss, and so on. I laughed it off, but as I went to leave the room, I noticed that the boiler, which was fitted just outside the bathroom door, facing the kitchen, was switched off. I could plainly hear the gurgle of taps in the bathroom, but the bath must have been ice cold. I knocked on the door. "Hey Jack, you want me to turn the hot water on?" No reply. The chanting continued. He mustn't have heard me. If he wasn't aware that the water was cold, he soon would be, as soon as he dipped his toe into the tub. Most likely. I smiled at the thought and returned to my room. Despite the caffeine burning its way through my system, I managed a solid 3.5 hours sleep and rose from my bed with time for either a shower or a coffee before I had to set off. I picked the shower, knowing I could grab a coffee from the shop on the corner by my office. But when I got to the kitchen, my feet splashed down into half an inch of cold water, shimmering atop the tiled floor. I dared not try any of the lights or kitchen appliances, so I fumbled my way across the gloomy room to the bathroom door and hammered on it. Even as I did, I realized, in a moment of stinging terror, that the chanting was still happening, albeit in a more feeble, exhausted voice. There was a light coming from under the door too. Bright, electric light that made white prisms in the murky bathwater. "Jack, you in there?" The weak chanting continued, but the hissing had abated. I grabbed the door handle and threw all my weight behind my shoulder as I turned it, simultaneously shoving it open, squinting with eyes unaccustomed to the light. And there he was, Jack, lying in the bathtub, facing the door, his mouth moving, reciting things I could barely even hear anymore, and his face crumpled with fatigue. The water spilling over the top of the bath was a reddish brown, and as I stumbled forward, I saw why. Fanning out across the surface of the water were Jack's organs. All of them. The spools of intestine, the heart that still thudded out little ripples over the bathwater. All of his organs spread out and floating around him, and his mouth still moving in ghastly mimicry of life. In the corner of my eye, wedged between the end of the bathtub and the wall of the shower cubicle, there stood something else too. Tall and pale and wrinkled, and watching my flatmate's waterlogged form twitching there in the bath. But I never had time to look at it. My gaze was fixed on the sickening spectacle before me, my stomach churning violently. "Fuck, Jack!" All of this took place in a matter of about 2 seconds. Even as the words left my mouth, the light above me suddenly flared brightly and then popped. The switch from dark to light, then back to dark, all in a matter of a few heartbeats, was too much for my eyes, and I flailed backwards, slipping on the floor as my vision was filled with neon starbursts and silhouettes superimposed atop them. Everything had fallen completely silent. By the time my vision had cleared enough to see, Jack was dead. The rosy apple of his heart bobbed there, a hollow, stationary shell, and his mouth hung loose and wide as bathwater rushed inside to soothe his ruined throat. The open window allowed the warm fingers of a late summer breeze to brush the surface of the water, sending a little wave rolling along its surface. I looked for the man in the corner of the room, but he'd vanished, taking with him whatever strange force of will that Jack had kept chanting. The police were less than helpful. They initially suspected me, and when I finally got a good lawyer, they ruled Jack's death as self-inflicted and closed the case. When I told the detective about the man I'd seen, and Jack still chanting while so grievously wounded, he grimaced and told me that I drank too much caffeine, that the rush of blood to my head was causing my brain to play tricks on me. Then, just like that, I was left alone to pick up the pieces. I had to sort through Jack's things, and I found a reef of unpaid electricity, water and gas bills. For 3 weeks, we had been using double the amount of electricity we normally used, and the billing authorities had threatened to disconnect us from the grid if we didn't pay up. I sorted through them all by lamplight, coffee cooling atop a stack of envelopes, calculator on my lap. We owed hundreds of pounds in utility bills and fines. As I did so, I swore I could hear the pipes gurgling, like someone was using the taps downstairs. But when I ran to check, everything was off. For a time, I became obsessed with the manner in which Jack had died, printing off newspaper articles and listening to archived reports about strange crimes in the area. But there was nothing even close to resembling what I'd seen. I had missed so much work to sleepless nights, I was laid off, and had to enlist the help of my brother and a few friends to pay off the money I owed. Eventually, I moved back in with my parents. I guess it would make more for an engaging tale if I were to tell you that I was haunted by Jack's vengeful spirit. Or that pale thing from that bathroom stalked me wherever I went. But I would be lying if I did so. It's like, between the light going out and the forensics team finally draining that ice-cold water, Jack just ceased to be. His family won't even talk to me, and mine tell me to try and forget everything that happened and move on with my life. But it's just hard, you know? I don't even drink coffee anymore. Never ever say the phrase, "It can't get any worse," because it can. I was already having the shittiest time of my life. I had finally moved in with my boyfriend of 5 years, just to catch him cheating on me with his best friend's ex. Apparently, they'd been hooking up for the past 2 years. Luckily, I had the lease in my name, so I could kick him out. I got passed over for a promotion at work, and they were increasing our workload. Needless to say, I was a hot mess for a few months. I did the typical breakup thing, wallowing in self-pity for a few weeks. It didn't help that Brad, who got the promotion before me, was asking me if I was sad about not getting it. I heard him make a joke when he thought I was out of earshot, that I was letting myself go since I started here. Jerk. He was always brown-nosing the bosses, going on golf trips, while barely doing the bare minimum of work. I, on the other hand, worked my butt off, worked overtime, took on extra projects, and skipped numerous lunches. The kicker was, I wasn't just working to try to get a promotion. It was also to save up so Steve and I could go on a vacation to a remote cabin by the woods. It was supposed to be romantic. I called off the next day and decided I was going to get it together. I was going to lose weight, work out, and buy some new clothes. I wasn't going to let this stuff bring me down. Within a few weeks, I had lost a few pounds and was starting to feel better about myself. Then work announced they would have to lay off some people. They said the company wasn't performing as well as hoped, and that they would have to make a 30% reduction in staff. Unfortunately, I was among those being cut. Apparently, they considered several factors, and my recent absence and perceived lack of productivity placed me in that category. Luckily, because I'd been with the company for a decent amount of time, I received severance. I decided to use the rest of my sick time that I had earned with the company and put some time into me. I slept in for the first little bit and read a few smart novels that I'd been meaning to get to. Once I had gotten some R&R, I decided I wasn't going to sit around and be a doormat. I was done letting the men in my life treat me like that. I started going to the gym and eating better, since I didn't have to hear Steve complain about losing his prime dad bod he'd been working so hard on. By the time I finished with the company, I felt like a whole new version of myself. I decided, since I hadn't heard back from any potential employers, to treat myself to a vacation. Going on vacation with my best friend Jessica. It would be a chance to get away from the social media drama associated with people who knew me. Steve or my old employers. Plus, most of the new places I had applied to were remote. And maybe I would finally use my English degree for something I wanted. So I booked an Airbnb in a nice lake town surrounded by woods. It was said to be an up-and-coming spot attracting a younger crowd. Apparently, the town was on the verge of dying out until a group of investors, rumoured to include some influencers with too much money on their hands, tried to give the town a makeover. It sounded like a fun place. There were microbreweries, gastropubs, lounges, and even a cafe. I figured that, at the very least, we could go out and I could attempt to socialise a little bit. Unfortunately, the night before we were supposed to leave, Jessica called me.
Girl, I'm so sorry. I've been throwing up for the past hour and... Oh no.
I don't want to think about the noises I heard on the other end.
I don't think I can make it tomorrow. Please forgive me.
Jessica, you need to get some rest. Don't worry about it. I'm still going to go. It might be good for me, I said with feigned enthusiasm. Jessica seemed too sick to notice. I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, saying out loud to my reflection, "Look here, Rhiannon. You're going to go on that vacation and have fun. So what if you broke up with your boyfriend, lost your job, your best friend is too sick to go on the girls' trip with you? It can't get any worse than that." I laughed at myself and made myself smile. You were going to go out and have fun, Let your freak flag fly. I went to bed and actually fell asleep pretty fast. I got to sleep in a little more than I originally planned, because I didn't have to drag a grumpy Jessica out of bed. I love her to death, but boy, she's a pain in the ass in the morning. I will never forget the semester. She had an 8 a.m. class and I had to wake her up. But we survived that. If we remained best friends after that, we can definitely survive anything. The drive to the town was relaxing since we decided to book Wednesday through Sunday. I got to the Airbnb and punched in the code. The house was as advertised, smelled clean, and there was even a welcome package of snacks and basics like coffee. It made me a little sad when I saw it had girls' trip on the note. But I decided I was going to try to be positive. I messaged Jessica, and luckily, she was feeling better, but still a little weak from the dehydration. She said she was hoping she would be able to make it out if today went well. I told her not to worry about it. I was starving and needed to figure out what I was going to do for food. I had already hit up the nearest grocery store to get the essentials for the weekend. I was too lazy to cook after the drive. It looks like the only place that would be open later was one of those bars, one of the last strongholds of the old dying town. No matter, I can get a beer and a burger. I'm probably going to call it an early night anyway. I changed into a cute black v-neck sweater dress, knee-high boots and jacket. It was enough to be flirty and say, I might be interested, without seeming too desperate. It was spring, but there was a bit of a chill in the air. I drove over to the bar and took a seat. It was pretty quiet. Perfect, I thought. I ordered my food and draft beer. I was sitting, sipping my beer, waiting for my food order, when he walked in. He was tall, broad, had long hair pulled in a low ponytail, and a thick, well-kept beard. He was the type I always looked at, but never had the guts to talk to. To my surprise, he sat by me at the bar, with a small nod of acknowledgement. I returned the gesture, trying to think of what to say. His dark brown eyes occasionally caught mine. Luckily, my food came just in time before I could speak.
Here you go, miss. Bacon burger, medium, half fry and half onion rings. Made it a double meat patty since you're so dang skinny. I know you didn't order a double, but it's on the house.
The bartender stated with a wink. If he weren't twice my age, I probably would have thought it was cute. No matter. I smiled politely and thanked him. I noticed that the guy was looking at my food.
Excuse me, sir. I'll have what she's having, please.
The bartender nodded and headed to the kitchen to place the order. I took my shot then. If you want some of my fries or onion rings while you wait, please help yourself. There's way too much for me to eat myself. With that, the stranger sat at the stool next to me. He introduced himself as Wyatt. I introduced myself and replied with my usual anecdote. Yeah, my parents were big Fleetwood Mac fans. With that, he cracked a crooked grin that made my heart skip a beat. Wyatt's food came shortly after. The guy finished his whole plate and half of mine. I ate until I was satisfied and let him have the rest. The poor guy ate like he hadn't eaten in days. I really wanted this one particular job since it was work from home. Once my apartment lease was up, I could go and travel around the country and work wherever I wanted, as long as I had internet. I hadn't had the guts to tell Jessica this plan yet. Afraid she would say I was abandoning her. I wasn't. I just spent most of my life taking care of others and wanted to focus on me. Wyatt, with an appreciative expression. I wondered what he was thinking. Suddenly feeling extremely self-conscious, I blushed, hiding half my face behind my hair. I hadn't done this gesture in years. Wyatt gently tucked my hair behind my ear.
I think you are the most fascinating woman I've ever met.
This was it. This was my chance to live on the wild side. I was going to live a little for once. I asked the bartender for my tab, and Wyatt did the same. He was a gentleman and paid for mine as well. Oh, no, you don't have to do that.
What kind of man do you think I am? I can't just eat half your dinner and not pay for it.
I don't know what drove me to say it, but it was as if someone else was speaking through me. You can at least come over to my place for some dessert then. There was a gleam in his eye before he looked at me and said,
I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Feeling instantly like I misread the signs and my face heating with embarrassment, I simply said, Oh, With this, I quickly grabbed my purse and walked straight out the door, getting a few whistles as I walked past some men at the pool table. As I was looking for my keys, I realised I left my phone at the bar. Shit, you idiot. I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up to see Wyatt with a sheepish grin on his face.
You, left this. Figured you might want it back.
I quickly grabbed it. Thank you. I went to pull away, and Wyatt grabbed my wrist. His grip was firm, but careful not to hurt me.
I wasn't saying no. It's just, I'm worried I won't be able to control myself around you. I like you, but I wouldn't forgive myself if something happens to you.
I stepped closer to him, looking up at his face. I'm a big girl. I know exactly what I'm asking for.
I don't think you do.
He towered over me. How tall was this guy? I know I wasn't tall, but I barely came up to his chest. With his mouth crashed into mine, I nearly got dizzy with the intensity of this kiss. Yeah, I have been kissed before, but not like this. I pulled away to catch my breath and said, I'll drive to my place. Get in. I only had one drink, so I wasn't worried about the drive. We drove to my place in silence. When we got inside, we picked up exactly where we left off. I'm not going to go into details of what happened because I'm a lady. Well, that, and I don't know how to explain what happened that night. It was something I had never experienced before. Something primal. Animalistic even. It was the best night I've ever had. And no book will ever describe the feeling of euphoria I experienced that night. The thing is, I don't remember the bite. Wyatt bit me that night during one of our... Yes, there were multiple. Not the point. Focus, Rhiannon. It was during one of our finales. This is what caused my whole life to change. It's truly crazy how one night can change the whole course of my life. I will never be the person I was before. I've changed. But would I go back to who I was before? No, I wouldn't. That's saying a lot because right now, nothing makes sense. I'm still trying to process everything. What I thought I knew about the world has been totally turned upside down. This sort of thing is supposed to happen, or be real. Wyatt was the one who realised it. I guess in the early sunlight, he was able to see the mark. It was almost completely healed, but the shiny white scar created by the curse gave it away.
Did you always have those scars on your shoulder?
What are you talking about? I said groggily.
These marks, right here.
He traced them with his finger. I turned to him, still bleary-eyed, with a confused expression.
They look like bite marks. Wait. Oh, fuck. I think I bit you. Fuck.
He rubbed his hand over his face. A stressed expression creased his features.
This is bad. Very bad. I'm so sorry. I lost control. I never lose control. You just smelled good, and it's been a while, and... shit. It's that time of year, idiot.
He flopped on his back with his hand on his forehead. Thoroughly confused, I look at him. What the hell are you talking about? My mind's thinking I've made a huge mistake in hooking up with a crazy person. Trying to think if I missed any signs last night. My mind is reeling. Was this why he was hesitant? Had I bullied him into doing something that he wasn't ready for? I didn't think I had. Seeing the confused look on his face, he sighed.
This is going to sound crazy, but you need to know something. There was a reason I said I was worried I wouldn't be able to control myself. I'm a lichen. It's like a werewolf. And it's the season. It's the same as a wolf's mating season. I kind of lost control last night. I think the full moon's coming up too.
He checked his phone really fast.
It's in 2 days. You should be okay. Actually, I think I might still have my amulet that should keep you safe.
He began to get up and look for his clothes. I'm not going to lie. I did get distracted by his nakedness. For the man was certainly a sight to behold. He found his jeans, which were apparently what he was looking for. At first, I was admiring his tattoo on his shoulder, but then I noticed a scar. It was horrible. A bite mark on his forearm. It looked like something clamped down pretty hard on his arm. He grabbed what he was looking for out of his pocket. He noticed where I was looking. So that's a gnarly scar. What do you mean, werewolf? You weren't a wolf last night. I don't have a bite mark like that, do I?
No, you don't. And unfortunately, I'm not joking. I was on a hunting trip with my best friend. We were attacked. My friend was killed in the process. I was bitten and managed to kill it. Despite what the legends say, it doesn't break the curse if you kill the one who turned you. Apparently, something about my bloodline makes me different than a regular werewolf, now that I've gotten used to it. I can control it completely, but others can't. I don't know if the same will go for you, because I bit you. I don't know the exact science of it. I'm so sorry.
He had something silver in his hand that he was looking at, still mulling the information over in my head. I really could use some coffee right now. I don't know about you, but I usually don't function well until I get my coffee. He simply nodded, stashing whatever was in his hand back in his pocket, and we both got partially dressed and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. I was preparing the coffee in a pair of pajama shorts and a sweater when Wyatt broke the silence.
I can make some breakfast if you like. I may not look it, but I'm a great cook.
My stomach seemed to speak for me as it loudly growled. I was starving. I'm never this hungry in the morning. I usually have to force down a protein bar or something, but with the possibility of Jessica coming, I bought breakfast foods anyway, because it's her favourite meal. I nodded. He proceeded to open the fridge and grabbed out the carton of eggs and a pack of bacon. He cooked up half the eggs, some biscuits, and the full pack of bacon, which smelled so good. I considered eating it raw. Raw? What the fuck? Once the coffee and food were ready, we sat down at the kitchen counter. I was ravenous, as if I hadn't eaten in days. This was so unlike me. Even when I was eating my fill, I never ate with such ferocity. I then began to think that he wasn't lying to me. I looked at him and asked the question I had been scared to ask. You're not joking, are you?
Unfortunately, I'm not. Everything I've told you is true.
He stopped eating and looked at me.
You'll start to notice that you'll be hungrier. If you cut yourself or get injured, you'll heal faster than normal. Also, your hearing, night vision, and strength will all be increased. The only thing I'm not sure of is if you'll be able to control it like I can. That's what I'm worried about.
I looked at him with confusion. He then proceeded to pull out the necklace he had been looking at. I looked at the necklace. It's a little early to be giving me jewelry, isn't it? I said, trying to keep my tone light. He gave a small laugh at my joke.
It's not like that. This is something that I got from a shaman when I was trying to get answers about what happened to me. It will help you keep control so you don't do anything you'll regret.
He handed it to me. I took it. And it didn't burn like I thought it would. It felt heavier than it should have, and had an odd warmth to the touch. More than it should have for being in his pocket. He helped me put it on. The necklace was silver with a medallion-like charm of a wolf. The back had a flat piece of what looked like obsidian. I looked at the necklace hanging around my neck. The warmth it gave was comforting. It almost had a heartbeat to it, which sounds crazy, but it put me at ease.
It looks good on you. And despite what the lore says, silver won't kill us. It can slow us down if it's blessed the correct way, but not the way Christianity believes. Native people knew the proper way to keep the curse at bay. If you ever need help, find a shaman or medicine man. On the back is black tourmaline. It will help you be in control of the curse.
He gave a shy smile. So, I need to wear this during the full moon only, because I might change? He nodded.
Yes. It will make sure you stay human. You might be a little more tired the first few times, but your body will get used to it. I would recommend leaving it on until I'm able to see how bad it is when you do change. But I have a few jobs lined up before I can do that, and they can't wait. If I wait, people will die.
It was more the way he said it than anything that made me feel like he wasn't joking. You said you're a hunter, right? What do you hunt? And what do you mean by you can control it?
For one of those questions, I can show you better than I can tell you.
I thought he was just hitting me with a line from a smut novel, but I was very wrong. He stood up from the stool and his eyes darkened. He closed his eyes and, with a crooked smile, slowly opened them. His eyes were no longer dark brown, but amber, and I could no longer see the whites. I froze. He looked completely predatory. He lifted one side of his mouth to reveal an elongated fang.
See?
He closed his eyes, made his face blank for a second. When he opened them again, he was back to normal.
Those are the less painful things to change. I've had to change other features while hunting, and I only fully transform as a last resort. It's not fun, and it completely ruins my clothes. I got caught once without a backup set. Never again.
I was in awe of him at that moment.
As for your other question, I hunt cryptids. If they get out of line, or if there's an overpopulation of animals causing an issue in the ecosystem. That's why I get paid so well for what I do. I'm only called in when I'm desperately needed. Occasionally, I will do a rescue job, but it's not often. The moon doesn't affect me as much. I still have a few more urges around that time, and apparently, during mating season, I can't control myself, although this is the first time I've encountered it.
Completely skipping over the last little bit, I asked, "What do you mean, urges?" As if it dawned on him what I might be thinking.
Oh, nothing too crazy. Just a little more aggressive. My anger is quicker, but I've got to be careful, because with the added strength, one punch can do a lot of damage. I also tend to eat more meat and like my steaks rare.
That explains why I wanted to eat the raw bacon, I thought to myself. We spent some time together after that, talking and getting better acquainted. Before I knew it, he told me he had to go. Knowing what he did, I didn't want to keep him from his work. He apologised and said that if it weren't for the fact that this strange creature seemed to also follow the moon cycles, he would have waited to go. It wasn't a werewolf. The victims weren't brutally mutilated, but rather drained into husks, as if their insides were sucked out. I shuddered at the thought. I drove him to where he was staying so he could prepare for his next job. We exchanged information so we could keep in touch. He promised to keep me posted on his jobs and when he would finally be able to see how the bite would affect me. We kissed goodbye, and I told him to stay safe. He reminded me to keep the necklace on. He told me to keep the necklace on, if only for the full moon, if it wasn't my style. I nodded in agreement. When I got back to my Airbnb, I felt happy and sad. I felt like I connected with Wyatt in a way I never connected with someone before. But I couldn't believe the consequences of the encounter. I mean, if I don't pay attention, I might hurt someone. I decided that I would spend the rest of my trip staying in and relaxing. Jessica was still sick, but recovering, so she wasn't going to make it, which was fine by me. It would give me much needed time to process everything that was going on. Wyatt checked in with me a few times and sent me some cute messages. I had heard back from the job I wanted. I could not wait to work remotely. I started in 2 weeks. All in all, things were looking up. So I got infected with what I thought was just a myth to scare people. Luckily, even though it was an accident, the person who gave it to me was responsible about it. I'm now a werewolf. Or a lichen. It can't get any worse, right? Famous last words. Jessica told me to stop using that phrase. Now I know why. It was my day or night at the Airbnb. The day of reckoning, if you will. I thought I would just get 2 more delicious burgers from the bar, then take it easy for the day. Keep it simple, so I wouldn't have to worry about becoming a creature of the night that terrorised a small town. Or worse. Well, after lunch, I took a nice hot shower, and because I was tired, decided to lay down for a nap. I figured all the excitement and late night binge watching TV, throwing off my sleep schedule. A nap wouldn't hurt. I was worried I would tarnish the necklace. I had been taking it off to shower. I forgot to put it back on and dozed off. But my edition of Naked and Afraid will be my next entry. I will post soon. Entry 1. I finally managed to find this little notepad and a working pen. So I guess I might as well leave a record of my current circumstances. That's what you do, right? when you're trapped in a liminal place. You write journal entries, notes, or something for the next poor soul to find. That is assuming you don't make it out yourself. I always said, if I had to die, I wanted it to be immersed in creepypasta. Wish granted. I don't think I'm going to die here. Well, maybe. Who knows? This place is certainly creepy and feels dangerous. But I digress. Let's start at the beginning. I go by Review Cultist. I'm a podcaster and reader of all things internet horror. I love collecting strange items and visiting places related to creepypastas. Hell, I went to West Virginia once just to drive by the spot where Ica Falls is supposed to be. So you can imagine my excitement when I was hiking in my local forest and found an old digital recorder in a plastic bag. I was thrilled. Even with the bag's protection, it did take some time to clean it up once I got back home. But once I popped in some fresh batteries, it worked. There wasn't anything to play back as far as I could tell. So I did the tried and tested method of saying test, test into the mic to test the recorder and see if it would play back. Probably should have noped away from it when I heard my voice through the grainy speaker. But it was saying stuff I had never said, or at least I didn't recall saying at the time. Personally, I really enjoyed the setup for this story. The creature brought to mind, Swamp Thing. This seemed to be the stuff from the show, al dente rigor mortis. On the show, my friends and I discussed and reviewed various creepypastas. Plug. Even in a weird space. The weirdest part was, when a story's title was dropped in the fragmented sentences, it was one I knew we hadn't done yet. Also, as I would rewind and play things back, it would play new lines or discussions. At that point, I got really excited and a little creeped out. I went to do what I usually do in those sorts of circumstances. Grab my phone and send a message to one of my co-hosts and maybe even post another update on Twitter about it. Problem was, I couldn't find my phone. I started looking around in futility, still clutching the recorder in my hand, and I must have hit something. The recorder's speaker suddenly crackled to life on full blast this time, and a high-pitched version of our show's intro music started to play. I'm not ashamed to say that it jump-scared me, and I dropped the recorder onto a leafy forest floor. I didn't even have time to fully process the sound of leaves crunching, as the next thing I know, in the blink of an eye, my house had suddenly been replaced with a darkened forest. The jump and the sudden change in my surroundings caused me to trip up and I fell over. This resulted in sudden pain and the sound of my fat ass crushing the recorder under me. I sprung up and turned around to inspect the damage, and yeah, that recorder was in pieces. As I was looking at the bits strewn about and half pressed into the dirt, however, I noticed another recorder, and another. There were recorders of various makes, models, and ages scattered about the forest floor in and beneath the undergrowth. I picked a few up, but everyone I checked was heavily weather damaged. As I looked around this weird forest, I'd found myself teleported. That's when I noticed the sounds. If you live near forests, you get pretty familiar with the soundscape. Birds, insects chirping, trees creaking in a breeze, that sort of thing. I was hearing something like that kind of soundscape, but it was off. Straining to listen closely, I realised that the sounds were actually the murmurs of people talking or chatting, but muffled, and maybe even sped up and distorted. I tried to trace where the sounds were coming from, but it was coming from everywhere. I listened harder, and as I got closer to one of the trees, I was able to make out one set of voices, though I couldn't make out any of the words. I could tell it was coming from inside the tree. The call was coming from inside the fucking trees. I had to be dreaming. I'd had some vivid dreams and even visceral nightmares in the past. Some even with weird, creepy trees. So maybe I was dreaming. I tried the methods I'd heard of waking myself up. I damn near pinched myself black and blue, and all I had to show for it was a very real and painful bruise on my cheek. Either I was in a coma, or this was some weird, surreal forest I had just been teleported to. I know they say if you get lost in the woods, you're supposed to stay put and wait for rescue, but does that count for weird audio forests? Besides, my personal saying about the woods is, they be scary, yo. I didn't want to be out in the open when it got dark. I decided I should look for shelter, and it actually didn't take too long before I found a man-made path in the forest. Though this trail proved to be quite the winding route, there wasn't a clear choice this way or that. so I just started walking in one direction along the path. The whole time I walked, the background sounds of the muffled voices continued playing. Occasionally, I'd hear other footsteps behind me, but every time I looked back, there was nothing. My pace would quicken every time, for a while anyway. I must have walked for several hours and no sign of a trailhead or other people, except for the muffled murmurings and the phantom footsteps. There were hills that the trail weaved around, climbed over, or even went up along and hugged areas densely carpeted with tall trees. These were a mixture of pines, oaks, and maple. The views would have been really cool if it wasn't for my circumstances and the weird atmosphere of this place. Night never really came, still hasn't come. It just stays a perpetual dusky twilight. As I continued, some voices up ahead began to get clearer. I could understand a few words, and it sounded like some people talking to each other, just around the next bend. I slowed down to a cautious crawl as I moved forward towards the people. It sounded like they were talking about some movie, like they were reviewing it, and there were others talking, but with other topics. A soft cacophony of controversial chatter was ahead of me, and the source finally came into view. I was both confused and felt like I was further down some rabbit hole. It wasn't people, it was trees, or rather logs. They'd been cut down and stacked, with the conversations bleeding out of the open ends of the logs. There were saws and other old lumber cutting tools here and there, even a crane-like machine. A cabin-like shack loomed on the other side of this clearing. No people inside, but I saw boot prints and mud in the dirt. So I walked quickly across the cleared area where ghostly conversations played out from felled logs. I kept surveying the place, looking for signs of movement, but found none. The big machine had some brand on it. The graphic work was old-timey and gilded. Pods and Casters Company. Really? Where the hell was I? Come on, Alice, wake up! I made it to the little porch of the cabin when I heard it. The sound of a chainsaw revving up from the direction I had come from. I looked out that way, scanning the tree line, but saw nothing moving. I decided it was best to get inside the cabin, and thankfully, the door was unlocked. Inside was a single empty office of rustic decor. There were some chairs, a couch, and a desk with some burned down candles. Strewn on the desk were various bits of a device, some kind of a dissected radio. I went around to the desk and checked the drawers, hoping to find something useful. And that's where I found the small notepad and pen I'm currently writing this with. There were also some fresh candles to give a bit more light in the cabin. I've barricaded the door with some of the chairs. But at this rate, if you think I'm going purposefully to sleep after hearing that chainsaw, which I've heard again twice now outside, a little louder, a little closer maybe, well, sleep is going to have to come to me. Just figured I'd get this down in case the person or thing wielding the chainsaw gets in here and I end up, you know. Entry 2. Glad this notepad and pen was still in the bottom of my bag. Guess I should play catch up here while I can. The few hours after my last entry while I was in the cabin were a bit uneventful, though it proved to be a calm before the storm. I had rummaged further through the office and found the aforementioned satchel and even a thermos of what smelled and looked like tomato soup and SpaghettiOs. It tasted fresh and fine. I was getting hungry at that point. After stuffing what I found down my gullet and into the bag, I must have fallen asleep on the couch. That's where I awoke from, to the sound of a chainsaw cutting through the door. The figure wielding the chainsaw was tall and lanky. He wore a wife beater with greasy coveralls, held the chainsaw with heavy leather gloves, and a burlap sack over his head, held there with rope around his neck. There was a V splashed in paint on the sack's front. His exposed skin seemed to be glowing faintly with a pale green. As he came crashing through the now destroyed door, I swear I heard a mechanical whirring and clicking sound from beneath the sack. I managed to put the desk between me and him, though I was not taking this as bravely as it might read. I was definitely in flight mode, scrambling as best as I could, trying desperately not to be near the saw blade. I was able to kick the desk into the tall guy's shins, and he backed up enough for me to vault past and escape through the door. That's where I saw the other one. Same outfit, wielding an axe, but this one had a big bold B painted on the front of his sack over his head. He was coming out of the woods quickly and quietly to my left, so I ran right. The path I had walked earlier continued on this side of the cabin, so I just continued down it and away from the logging site with these slasher film rejects. Thankfully, in the panic of the cabin, I had thought enough to grab a bag of stuff as I got off the couch. I kept running and running. And when my lungs burned and my feet were sore, I ran some more. I tried my best to keep a lookout for various roots sticking up out of the path as well as what was in front of me. Last thing I wanted to do was trip over and fall or run into one of those loggers waiting in ambush. By the time I looked back, I couldn't see any sign of the glowing fiends. So I started to slow down and eventually crashed next to a large oak by the trail side. I shuffled behind it out of view, just in case. The lighting was still gloomy dusk, and I tried my best to quietly start controlling my heavy, ragged breaths. Sweat was pouring down my face, and I tried to listen for any movement coming my way as I wiped it with my sleeve. All I could hear around me was more soft, muffled murmurs from the trees. Leaning this close to the oak, I realised that I could make out part of the conversation through a burl directly above me. It was my co-host and I on al dente rigor mortis, and we were discussing a story, as we do. But again, I didn't recall the conversation. We also didn't mention the story's title as I listened to it, but it sounded like it involved Halloween. That's when, on the recording, there was a knock at someone's door, mine by the sound of my recorded self's confusion. When I went to go check, headset unmuted, there was a loud crash. This was followed by screaming, panic shouts, what sounded like fighting, and then static. I listened to that static for a prolonged period and then decided I didn't want to stick around that tree any longer. Hearing my own voice and the voice of my friends talking about stuff I had no recollection of was bad enough. But the distress of the latter part sent a chill down my spine. I decided I didn't want to have some kind of dissociative panic attack develop, so I hopped up and tried not to think about it. As I got back up and on the path and saw a light a ways down, I froze. It was a light that wasn't there before. Initially, I ducked back down in the ferns and the brush, waiting to hear the chainsaw rev up. When all I heard was the murmuring forest, I poked back up to see the source of the light. It appeared to be a short, old light post near a building now on the side of the path. Another cabin-looking structure, a distance down where I had been heading, but definitely not there when I was running as far as I could tell. I approached the building cautiously, looking around and expecting something to happen. When nothing did, I went to the door and opened it, nearly jumping out of my skin when a brass doorbell above me chimed. Even from the dirty windows on either side of the door, I could tell there were lights on the inside, but I wasn't prepared for this as I entered. The interior was a cross between a modern gas station store, with fluorescent bulbs bathing everything in a soft humming light, and an old-timey trading post with the rustic decorum and antiqued yet new-looking goods. My stomach grumbled as I looked at various snacks on the shelves. As I went to grab the closest bag of corn nuts, the lights waved and darkened as a deep voice bellowed nearby. "Are you gonna buy that?" The voice came from a shadow in a dapper suit behind the counter. Once I had recovered from my heart attack, I looked over, not expecting a well-dressed darkness to talk to me. Yeah, I responded eventually, not sure if I actually had my wallet on me still. "Well, that'll be 2 money units," the shadow claimed. "Money units?" I asked as I fished into my pockets, where a wallet was not. "Yes, company script. Pods and Casters Company issued money units," said the darkness beyond the counter. "I'm afraid I'm a bit short on funds. Mind if I just sit down over there for a bit?" "Go right ahead. That's free. For a time anyway." So I sat down and checked the satchel, where I found the thermos, candles, and the notepad I find myself updating in now. After a few moments, I decided to brave the counter and ask some questions. As I approached, I noticed there was more intact radio equipment next to a register, and the lights over the dapper-clad shadow were off. All I could really make out was his dark green suit. Where am I? "Why, you're in Reverend's Goods in partnership with the Pods and No, sorry. Where is this place? What's the forest called?" I swear the shadow must have leaned in closer. I could just see the dark suit hutch forward. Everything else blended with the shadows around him. "We call this place the Backlogs. A forest grown deep and expansive from the soils of what-ifs and what could be broadcasts, built on the ashes of old airwaves and nurtured by the waters of the Everstream. The company has prospered here for some time, logging and mining as it pleases." Okay. Really? The Backlogs? Do the sackheads work for the company? V&B, yeah. They handle logging in these parts. Might want to stay clear of them. They have anger issues. Yeah, I got that. Is there a way out of the forest? Now that's propriety information. That's going to cost you 10 money units or to do it. I just sort of slumped at this. Again, he knew I didn't have it. And despite the fact I couldn't see any expression, I could tell he had a smile on his face. He leaned back and chuckled. There might be someone who could help you out. There was another like you who came through not too long ago. Don't recall their face too well, but I think they called themselves Nair. They asked where they could get some money units, and I may have mentioned they should head on to the old company mine. It's a ways down the path, over the Everstream and up the hills. Can't miss it, honestly. Word from the rumour mill is fortune favours the bold there. I looked to the door, looming and ominous. If I wanted out of here, this liminal rustic dreamscape from hell, I guess I was going to a mine. I hope they weren't going to say I needed to work in the mines to get the money. What did they even mine here? Thanks, I guess I'll be back then. As I said this, the only response I got back was a suspicious cackling as he moved into the shadows beyond the counter. It sounded like he'd started fidgeting with a radio back there. So I guess my next stop is the mine, to get money units so I can find how to get out of here. Not going to lie, this is weird and creepy, but it's also kind of exciting, but mostly creepy and weird. I still don't know if I'm just unconscious on my living room floor after some episode I've had that I've never had previously. The other option being, if I did indeed bite off more than I could chew, finding and tampering with a creepy item in the woods when I shouldn't have. Hopefully I make it and can maybe report back in this little journal. Oh, shit, this is a cliche. I kind of love it. Entry 3. Storytime, whoever ends up reading this. After I left the Reverend's goods, I started hiking along the path, away from where I'd walked and ran previously. There was no sign or sound of the loggers. Once again, just the soft murmurs of the tree recordings. The path eventually went by a small trail that led to a bridge that crossed the Everstream, as the shadowy clerk called it, which had been running roughly parallel to the path I was on for some time, something I'd come to notice in my travels here. There were no stones or boulders on the ground. Instead, much like the recorders from earlier, there were old TV and computer monitors, as well as analog audio and video equipment poking out of the dirt and among the undergrowth of the tree roots. I guess these were the natural rocks of the place. The nearby bridge was one of those arcing bridges that was made from wooden planks. As I stepped onto the bridge, I looked over the edge to the passing water below and was yet again reminded of the strangeness of this place. The water had a pattern running through it, similar to the light reflections you see in normal water, but this was much more angular and straight. The pattern reminded me of a circuit board, and as it continued filtering through the water, I saw that the stream bed was covered in more older computer parts, like hard drives and routers. I shook my head at this nonsense and tried in vain to wake myself up from this weird nightmare. The other side of the stream had more hills and slopes than where I had previously been walking. When the trail began to climb up, I began to pant from the extended climb and started seeing the signs. The signs were nailed to the wood posts along the trail, only partially obscured by brush, and read the following: Pods and Casters Co. mine work available. Inquire with the foreman. Warning: watch out for nitpick. Nitpick? Like nitpick? Huh, really? As I reached the halfway point in the path and this sign, I was about ready to pack it up and see where the main path kept going back across the bridge, when I heard a distant short scream up ahead. Part of me wanted to run. I even ducked down reflexively and looked around frantically. After a good 5 minutes of nervously listening and looking about from the side of the trail in what I hoped wasn't some kind of poison ivy, I decided to keep going up and see what that was about. As I reached the top of the trail, I could see some more signs similar to the ones on the way up the hill, and there was a small but sheer cliff face jutting out from a levelled out area with an old prospector-like mine setup built into it. There were old and rusted carts and mining equipment with the company's brand and a lit lantern by the entryway in the mine. No one was working or around outside. I took the lantern and looked down the dark tunnel, recalling my mild claustrophobia. After a moment, I took a deep breath and started venturing into the dark. I swear, if that tunnel narrows and I have to crawl, I'm turning back. Fuck that noise, I said to myself as I moved forward. I've been in caves and mines before, but I've also found that through reading various creepypastas and watching various YouTube videos about caving, I have no desire to try and squeeze through a tight spot in the earth. As it was, the tunnels were cramped but walkable. There was only one time where I had to crouch down and walk like a Gears of War character, which, let me tell you, doing that for a prolonged time sucks. I wasn't sure what this mine even was for, though I did occasionally come across what looked like some iridescent vein of mineral, I think. It gave off a hum when I touched it. Aside from these stones and their faint glow, there were signs of old unused lanterns and even some spent candles. In this area, the lighting was quite poor. Up ahead was a sign on the tunnel wall which said, "Foreman's Office," and an arrow pointing forward. I began to slow. The hum from the stones and the other unpleasant hollow earth sounds were all around me. I don't know which was worse, this or the incessant forest whispers and murmurs outside. My lantern light shone on something glistening on the ground, a puddle of what I first thought was water. But as I got closer, I saw the form of a person crumbled out on the bloody ground, head facing down and in my direction, like they'd been walking or running back the way I was coming. An old-timey miner's cap was nearby, but the person's clothes were modern. I crouched down beside them, after looking back and then behind the body for any movement, and I didn't like what I found. They were dead. I didn't need to check for a pulse. The back of their head was a mangled hole, like something large had pierced it. Maybe a pickaxe. I don't even bother trying to lift to see their face. The smell of blood and brains was gradually starting to set in over me. Strangely, the smell didn't hit me until I knelt down to the body. Now that it was there, combined with that gruesome sight, it was all I could do to stop from puking up the SpaghettiOs from earlier. I decided to check their pants pockets for any type of ID and money units, while fighting back the taste of tomato pushing up my throat. They didn't have a wallet, but they did have some paper and bills. The paper was postcard sized, and basically a worker's note stating their temporary worker status with the company and their signed name. Nair A. Tor. I groaned. And not just from my rebelling guts. It's an inside joke from my podcast, which apparently is a thing here. The bills were company money units, about 15 of it, in 1s and 2s and a 5. As I was putting those in my own pocket and getting up away from the body, that's when I heard a new sound. Up ahead, there was a soft orange light, likely another lantern around a bend. Coming from that direction was a distinct, clinking sound, like metal hitting haphazardly against stone. As I stood there in a moment of nervous paralysis, I saw the source and its wielder. A tall, lanky, dark figure was slowly and methodically walking into view, pickaxe dragging at its side, occasionally tapping the ground and wall, the orange light behind him casting a silhouette, leaving him still mostly in darkness. But the light of my own lantern bounced off some writing on a name tag. Foreman Knit. When his eyes lit up red like a fucking sleep paralysis demon is when I broke my own frozen state. As I turned to escape this nightmare of mine, I felt a whoosh of air as the pick narrowly missed where my head had just been. This guy, while lumbering when moving around, was very quick on the draw with that pickaxe. I heard it crash into the wall next to me as I began fleeing. The accompanying sound of his heavy boots stomping onto poor Nair's body was unpleasantly squishy. The next few minutes were a bit of a blur and a rush of darkness, dim light and sound. I whacked my head on the ceiling twice when I got to the low section. As I felt the throbbing pain on my scalp, I hoped that the tall bastard behind me would have more trouble, but I didn't hold my breath on that. Eventually, I saw the light at the end of the, even with the twilight gloom outside, I didn't give myself a moment's pause to adjust, so my vision didn't quite catch the other, tall, lanky fellow outside. He quietly wielded a wood axe and with a sack over his head. It was actually the repetitive click-clacking sound coming from underneath the cloth that gave me an indication of danger. I still ended up getting a nasty gash on my upper arm and immediately dropped the lantern that hand was holding. As I frantically weaved and ran by, the lantern must have smashed on the ground because I think I heard the sound of fire right before I tripped down the trail. I just proceeded to eat dirt, rolling and skidding a quarter of the way down toward the bridge. When I finally stopped, the world was still spinning and my arm was burning and wet with blood from the slice. The wound wasn't deep, but I held it tightly with my other hand and tried to see where to go. I could see both soft and heavy footfalls coming from above me. Aching all over, I got up and continued downhill. This was probably the most I'd run in years, but when you're being chased and attacked, I guess you'll do what it takes. Or just die. I really wish I had that lantern as I crossed the bridge, because it might have helped to have it burning between me and the two psychos. In desperation, I decided to run back to the general store, hoping it might still be there and could help me. I risked looking back once I ran ahead, and I didn't see anyone. Luck struck twice as the Reverend's goods were still there and open. I raced inside and practically sent the doorbell flying as I opened and slammed the door closed. "Trouble up the mine?" asked the suit wearing darkness behind the counter. I didn't respond. I simply walked among the shelves looking for some kind of first aid kit, which I found pretty quickly. I put it on the counter and grabbed the money units from my pocket awkwardly. "I need the bandages." "That'll be 5 money units," said the shadow from beyond, definitely grinning as he spoke. I gave him some mixed 1s and 2s and took the kit to the eating table on the other side of the store, where I'd left my satchel. Glad to see my stuff was still there, I started performing some quick and dirty patching up of the cut on my upper arm. Only 10 money units left. I had hoped when I found them that I could maybe buy some more food or a drink. I cursed that bee-sucked asshole with the axe. If I could get the info to leave, I could eat back home. Maybe I'd buy a sausage farmer's wrap with a coffee. Or fuck it, 2 farmer's wraps. Once more into the breach, I crossed the agnostic convenience store from hell again and put the remaining money units on the counter. How do I get out of these woods? Back to where I came from. My tone was tired and straightforward. A hand-sized shadow crept over the bills and took them. After an agonizing moment, the voice in the darkness spoke. "Well, I suppose you earned it. To go back to where you came from, you must go off the path behind my humble shop and follow the Everstream away from the bridge and mine you visited." I just need to go back the way I came in the first place? I was getting a bit flustered. The darkness spoke calmly and casually. "Follow along the stream, back to the old tracks, into some of the oldest parts of the backlogs. Then from there follow the tracks in the left direction. Them tracks go over the stream. So go left of the stream. Follow them for a spell and you'll make it back to where you came from." The shadow leaned back as if leaning onto a seat. "That's it. Well, you'll want to keep an eye out for those echoes." "Echoes? What are those? Like the logging psychos?" The shadow moved closer again. "Keep away from the echoes. You'll know them when you see them. And if you do, run." He was practically whispering in hushed tones at that point. Then he seemed to go and put the money units into the register and started tinkering again with the radio behind the counter. So that's my next step. Follow a stream off path till I find the old tracks and follow them home. I guess I'll end up somewhere in the real world so I can find my way back from there. Or who the hell knows? Maybe the tracks will pop right up inside my house and I can just call it a day. A really weird, painful day. As I've been writing this last entry, I've been thinking of whether I should leave this notepad here or take it with me. I still haven't decided, but I could post it online when I get back. On the other hand, maybe I should leave it near the trail somewhere in case someone else gets trapped or lost here. Might save them some money units. I'm also a bit worried about the echoes. I can't get any more about them from the Reverend. Hopefully I don't meet one. Knock on wood. Until next time, maybe. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I roll over, fall off the bed, and into another universe. I'm the kind of person who during break time from school, work, and or university, stays up till early hours of the morn and sleeps until early afternoon, simply by accident. I'm a night owl, but if I'm lying in bed, lights off, blanket sometimes on, sometimes off, done as much reading for the sake of tiredness as possible, and sleep still won't bless me with its gentle, relaxing hands for the night, I can pass the time by falling off the bed, and I'll be transported through an all-new realm, one that I don't think has been discovered by many others. I'll give you a demonstration. Right now, I'm in bed. It's 3 a.m, and I'm on top of the blanket because it's fairly hot tonight. Thankfully, the air conditioner is working, and it's relatively cool in here. The blanket beneath me is extra soft tonight, cradling me gently despite the major comfort I'm feeling right now. I'm wide awake, and sleep seems nowhere in sight. To pass the time, I'm going down into the bottomless darkness that is my bedroom floor. But first, I have to make the correct adjustments. You see, the first time I discovered this new space beneath the floor, My desk chair was facing towards the bed. The trash bin was on its side, directly aligned with the wall beside it. And the middle drawer of my lowboy was sticking out 2.5 centimetres. The next day, I had tidied my room up, and that night, I had attempted the feat again, only to be met with the cold, hardwood floor. It was at that moment, when I was tasting the varnished timber, that I realised that the gateway only opened up when these 3 objects were in the exact same position as they were on the first night. Don't ask me what these objects and their positions have to do with opening up a hole in reality in my bedroom, as you would be met with the same answer you'd get if you asked a kitten, only less meowing. So now, if I ever want to take a trip, all I have to do is set up the chair, bin, and drawer in their correct positions, get in bed, wait a few seconds, and simply fall off the bed. Simple. Yeah? So now here I am, ready to provide you with a live commentary on the event of interdimensional travel. I'm lying on my back, all nice and comfy. Sleep nowhere in sight. I roll over to the left, as there is more room on the floor to the left of the bed than the right. I'm now on my stomach. One more turn, and I'll be on my way. I turn again, and this time, there is no more bed to catch me at the end of the roll. I feel myself quickly plummet, well past where the wood floor would have met me. The soft light in my bedroom is quickly left behind me, and I'm falling through darkness. This is basically the foyer of this new realm of mine, succumbing to gravity, looking around this place as I fall, as there is nothing but darkness surrounding me. This would go on for different lengths of time each night, but it always feels like hours, days, even weeks, falling through this desolate space. But it's not always pure darkness. Approaching me now, directly underneath, is a landscape of stars. Within seconds, the field of stars is surrounding me on all sides. And it's a thing of simplistic beauty. Imagine the sense of wonder that you get just gazing at the stars at night from afar, amplified to the point where that sense of wonder is all around you, and you're moving through it, amongst it. The glittering specimens extend as far as the eye can see, backed by a blanket of intertwining waves of deep blue and black. But alas, like all things, the field of stars ends, and I'm greeted with the darkness once again. Soon I'll be landing back on my bed, falling in through the roof, and gently resting on my mattress, ready to hit the hay. This is essentially what happened. Hang on, that's not right. I should be in bed by now. The fall is over. That's all there is to it. Why am I still falling? There must be something wrong. Maybe I left the bin a little too askew. I assure you, this has never happened before. Every other time, I'm in bed at this point. What could Oh no. What is that? There's something approaching me out of the darkness. This is not right at all. Something dreadful has happened. This is all wrong. I can see a massive form coming to meet me. It's a vast figure. I can barely make out the shape. It's getting closer. Slowly, but surely. Hang on. That cannot be right. Those surely can't be real shapes, can they? Forms like that can't exist. They simply can't. What is this ghastly, unspeakable thing that surely must reside in this realm, this place I never should have tempted with? Shit. It's getting closer. I can feel a mounting pressure in my brain. I cannot turn away from this thing, and my head, a sight like this is impossible. Oh shit. My brain is dying. The pain. This terror is unfathomable, and the mere sight is too much for my mortal being to comprehend. I can feel it. This thing has a hand, and it's reaching for me. It has taken hold of my mind, and it's squeezing. The hand has passed through my physical skull and has a hold on my consciousness, and it's destroying me from the inside. The pressure is mounting. Oh, this is unbearable. No such pain in the universe could surely come close to this. My eyes, I no longer feel them in my face. I cannot see, yet I know this horror before me. It breaks the barriers of human senses, and I can feel it. All feeling to the rest of my body is gone. This blasphemy to common logic has separated me from my physical self, leaving only my consciousness in its grip. Why? Why would this thing, surely not of our God's creation, do this to me? All sense of sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell are gone. Do you have any idea what that is like? I am completely, sensually numb. The only thing I know is this unspeakable horror before me, and oh shit, it's squeezing again. My senses are gone, but the pain is immense. How is this possible? My mental being is bursting at the seams. Death, bless me now with your release. I cannot stand it. I cannot even